exciting talk today. This is going to be a really popular one, I'm sure. Maybe not just live, but once it's been saved to IGTV as well, because we're talking all about hypnobirthing today. And I'm going to be joined by the lovely Elise from Birth Bubble, who I want to say is a good virtual friend as well, because we chat and we are on the same page so much with what we both do. And Elise is going to be joining us to answer your questions, and we're going to also talk about how hypnobirthing and yoga are just this dream team of birth preparation, because there are so many similarities between the two practices, and when they are used together, I truly honestly think that it could not be a better way of preparing for birth and also enjoying your pregnancy. They are also programs or preparational programs or courses that really help your pregnancy as well. You know, help you learn about birth, get you feeling excited, get you feeling good, and understanding the logic and science as well. But we'll get all into that later. Hello everybody. So do let me know where you're watching from, if you're pregnant and how pregnant you are, but also perhaps you are a hypnobirthing practitioner watching this. I know that we are a lovely community of teachers who all love what we do. So let me know if you're watching below, perhaps you are a hypnobirthing practitioner, maybe you're thinking about doing the teacher training, maybe you've used it and you've been inspired to train. That's very, very common as well. And I am also a hypnobirthing practitioner. So this is something that I didn't ever set out to do intentionally a few years ago. However, about 6 years ago, when I was first pregnant, and I looked into hypnobirthing, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this is so me. This is so me. And if I have a birth that inspires me to do it, I will absolutely train to teach hypnobirthing. And it wasn't until my second birth that I then sort of clicked and thought, yes, because my first birth, as you know, wasn't the way I had hoped to go. But that's also because I didn't do any of the prep. I looked into hypnobirthing and then I thought, oh, that sounds good, and then I didn't do any practicing or any prep at all. So I went and did the practitioner training last year to kind of deepen my knowledge, deepen my understanding. I used hypnobirthing for my home birth, and then I thought I need to learn how to teach that so that I can make my yoga classes and everything I believe in with yoga and positioning, I can make them even more full of content, because hypnobirthing works. Hypnobirthing works. So almost 29 weeks with my first baby in Surrey. Lovely. I'm in Surrey too. Hello from in Melbourne. Oh, you're originally from Scotland. Welcome to our talk today. What time is it with you? Watching in Glossop, 26 weeks pregnant. 36 weeks, first time mum, Bub in breech position. Ah, welcome. I hope that you're feeling well, and I hope that you're feeling that you can explore your options there, but still time as well, right? Cool, so lots of you joining, thank you so much. So I'm going to invite Elise in. So very, very quickly, I know I say this every week, but please use this chance, this talk, to chat, to ask questions, to get to know one another, to converse, to support one another, share your experiences, share your what's worked for you in the past, share your doubts or your fears, that's okay as well. And as I said, if you are a hypnobirthing practitioner, then please do let us know that you're watching, let us know you're here, get involved in the conversation. Thank you so much. Love your content, Lucy. I'm 20 weeks pregnant, second bub, and live in south of Sydney. Thank you so much for joining. It's lovely to have you here. First pregnancy watching in Bristol. Great. So these talks happen every Monday, and I just want to say that this week will mark 1 year since I started the flow downs. I started the flow downs when we really were in lockdown as just a way of getting education out there, and they were kind of 20-minute chats, 15-minute chats, and like little topics about birth and a bit of a sort of update on the COVID restrictions or guidelines in the hospitals, and that's kind of where they were born. And here we are a year later, and we've had so many amazing people on, and we've covered so many topics and loads of wonderful births, of course. So how cool is that? I will definitely be doing a post about it this week to celebrate. But 1 year of the flow downs. The only time we stopped, I know, yay, thanks Elise. The only time I stopped them was when we were out of lockdown, because of course we were out, everyone wanted to get out of the house, and then as soon as we went back into lockdown in, I think it was October, November, or a type of lockdown, we were like, right, we'll start again. Come on, guys, let's keep going. Let's keep prepping. Let's keep talking. Let's keep getting education out there. So with that all said, let's invite Elise on. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I need to celebrate this, don't I? Right, I need to, what am I doing? I've not done the right thing here. Okay, there we are. Thanks, guys. Hello.
Good morning.
Morning, lovely. Oh,
How
it's so
are
nice
you?
to see you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. We were both
Good.
saying earlier that we've had a bit of a dodgy sleep.
Oh my God, it's always the full moon, isn't it? It's
Always the way. And don't
know.
you find that you go to bed and you can't sleep, and then you forget there might be a reason why, and then you go, oh yeah.
I know. It was actually when I went to the toilet at like 1 o'clock, and I went, oh, okay, and I saw it in the sky.
I see it, yeah. Oh, it's so
know,
frustrating.
It's always the way. Honestly, my little girl Millie, she always has nightmares, like the nights just before and on the full moon. It's so weird.
Really? Isn't that weird?
She's so affected by it. She was also born on a full moon though, and I'm sure you know this stat about the highest number of babies each month are born on or around the full moon.
Crazy, isn't it? But it doesn't make sense because of the waters that we're carrying, and you know, everything's going on in our body, and it's just a shift.
Exactly, the moon affecting waters and tides.
Yeah, completely. This morning in the playground, the kids were wired. They were just mental. All the kids were running around loopy, and all us mums and dads were sort of, what's going on?
Oh my gosh.
Like,
the moon combined with the clock change yesterday.
Yes.
It's all a bit much, isn't it?
Definitely.
Here we are, kid free. We can start afresh.
I know. Woo! It's so lovely to have you. So thank you so much for being here this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy.
Oh,
I love your flow downs. You know I do. I love them. So it's such an honour to be here.
Oh, thanks, Elise. Well, no, I think it's lovely to share with other birthy people who are just as passionate about, teaching and getting knowledge out there, but also working together, because there are so many of us birthy folk who work in this area, and we need to be talking together and bringing all our ideas together and passions together, you know, because everyone's got a different take on what works, and everyone's used their teaching to help so many different people, and when we bring that all together, it can be really powerful.
I know, it is amazing.
So please do introduce yourself to everyone. Tell us all about you.
Sure. So I'm Elise. I am firstly a mum to two little people. So I've got a little girl, Millie, who is 3.5, going on 13, honestly. My three-nager. And then I've also got a little boy called Max, who is 5 months old tomorrow. And I'm more than happy to talk about my birth experiences with them and how I use hypnobirthing and also yoga, because that's where Lucy and I love chatting, hypnobirthing and yoga, and that's that amazing combination. So that's me as a mum, and then I'm also, of course, a hypnobirthing teacher. So I set up Birth Bubble after I'd had my little girl Millie. I had an amazing experience with her. And I just couldn't believe that out of my group of antenatal education friends, so there was a group of 10 of us in the antenatal class, I couldn't believe that only 2 out of the 10 had anything positive to say about our births.
Really?
And I remember so clearly that first antenatal reunion when the babies were all 8 weeks old, and we had to go around in a circle and talk about our births. And I was last, and there was one girl who'd had a really positive induction, and she kind of went second, and then there was me at the end, and I honestly felt a bit embarrassed and a bit shameful to say that I'd had this really positive birth. And my birth wasn't perfect in any way. But it was so positive, and I had such a positive kind of memory to look back on.
And had you done hypnobirthing with Millie?
I had. So I did this, I did a kind of generic antenatal course, and I sort of did I kind of got pregnant, and everyone said, I'm in North London, they said, right, you must do this antenatal course. So I just booked on willy-nilly, didn't do my research. And actually, the antenatal course was very sweet lady, but she was incredibly outdated, and to the extent that my mum went to her course when she was pregnant with me. Okay, wow. It was really it was quite an outdated course. But I met some really lovely people. However, I came away from those classes feeling way more terrified than when I went in.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It was interesting, and then coming to hypnobirthing, you realise, wow, so much of that is because of the language and the way things were kind of taught. So in addition to kind of coming away feeling quite scared, I also, in my pregnancy with Millie, was terrified of needles.
Oh,
So like massive needle phobe. So what was happening for me was that like my kind of anxiety about birth was increasing. Then I was having to go for all these blood tests as you do when you're pregnant. And that anxiety was increasing as well. And I just thought to myself, if I can't deal with a blood test needle, how the hell am I going to deal with an epidural needle, for example? And that's actually when someone then suggested hypnobirthing to me and said, listen, you know, my friend, she did hypnobirthing and she had this amazing drug-free birth and there was no epidural in sight. And to me, all births were with an epidural. And that's also partly because at this time when I was pregnant with Millie, I was working in television. So I was working on the international productions of shows like One Born Every Minute.
Oh my goodness. So
yes, I had seen about 600 episodes of One Born Every Minute. So in my mind, birth was ingrained as such a medical event.
A medical experience,
And, you know, even though I knew kind of working on One Born Every Minute that the positive, straightforward births were often edited out because they were boring. That's a little secret for everyone watching. Normal birth is boring.
You want a boring birth.
Yes, boring. Not a lot is happening. There isn't this drama.
There's no drama.
It doesn't make good TV, does it? So we wonder why birth is depicted in this funny way on TV where it's all dramatic. And that's because actually straightforward physiological birth, not a lot happens.
There's no events. There are no events to talk about. And
exactly.
So, no one's going to tune in for that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of where I was coming at it from. And then thankfully, I did look into hypnobirthing. So I read a book. I read the Catherine Graves book. I know we both trained with KGH. So I read Catherine Graves' book when I was 28 weeks pregnant. And that literally, I consumed that in a day. I just like devoured it and it completely changed my way of thinking. And then I thought, oh, really? Is this really legit sort of thing? So then I read more books. I actually read a total of 16 books in the last 3 months of my pregnancy. So I guess this is where the hypnobirthing teacher in me sort of started.
Oh my goodness. But that obviously, it was obviously a light bulb moment for you.
It was a bit of a light bulb moment where I was like, oh my goodness, like this is incredible. And why did I not know this? And why does no one else know this?
Yes.
And I guess, that time, you know, kind of almost 4 years ago now was when I would have been doing all of this. It was newer than I think it is now. And I think it's, you know, this is where the power of Instagram is amazing. We didn't have Instagram in this way. We didn't have these lives. There wasn't such a free spreading of information and knowledge, which I'm so happy that there is now, because it makes, you know, preparing in a positive way much more accessible. So yes, I was kind of lucky to do all my reading, and then I didn't do a course, but I did tons of reading, my own research, and I actually found on my phone last night my list of notes for James, my husband, of everything I wanted him to do and support me. And you know, I was thinking like, wow, I was really a hypnobirthing teacher in the making. Without
that sounds like and I think going back to what you said about 4 years ago, there wasn't as much talk about it. I agree, but I think also, don't you feel there was a pressure that if you were looking into hypnobirthing, you were a certain type of person with a certain type of expectation?
Yes.
And I think that's something else that maybe prevents people, or puts up a barrier to people exploring it.
It's that word. It's the hypno in hypnobirthing.
It's the word.
It's the word. And so, should we demystify that right now, Lucy?
Let's do it, because I do think people often say to me, "But what is it then?" And even now, all of the talking I do, people even I know say, "So is it basically a hypnosis?" And and then I'll say, "But well, anyway." So let's talk about it, because the word doesn't do it the most of favours. But when we understand
I think every hypnobirthing teacher would love it to have a rebrand.
I know, and I think every hypnobirthing teacher thinks,
established.
But what could we call it? Because it's Anyway, so tell us. You tell us, what is hypnobirthing?
Okay, so hypnobirthing is simply birth education. That's what it is in its most simple form. It is a program of birth education and birth preparation. So the hypno in hypnobirthing comes from hypnotherapy. So it doesn't come from Darren Brown's stage hypnosis. Here I am with my pocket watch.
Yeah, and you're not doing this. Well, you might be, but you don't have to be.
Exactly. I once had a dad saying, like, so you're going to start talking to the baby now? I was like, no.
It's not, and it's, sorry, carry on.
But I think you do think that when you hear hypno, and I did as well. I was like, hypnobirth, that's not for me. I was honestly, I was that person. But then, you know, understanding. So the hypno comes from hypnotherapy. So if anyone here's had hypnotherapy, like, let us know in the comments. But hypnotherapy, it's a talking therapy where you go to change your certain behaviors or habits. So for example, my brother, God, I'm sharing all the family secrets here. My brother, when he was 9 years old, was a compulsive nail biter. He couldn't stop biting his nails. And then my mum sent him off to a hypnotherapist to change the way he was processing his behaviors in the subconscious part of his mind. And then that meant that after a few sessions, he stopped this behavior. So it's used the whole time on the NHS for things like, you know, stopping compulsive behaviors, things like stopping smoking, losing weight. It's a talking therapy. So there's no medication. It's literally, you go in and you sit with a therapist, and what they do is they get you nice and deeply relaxed. So just like if any of you here use Headspace or Calm app, and you use those meditations to get you deeply relaxed. So hypnobirthing uses the same sort of tools to get you into that deep state of relaxation. And then the key thing is that once your mind is nice and relaxed, it means that the thinking part of the brain, this neocortex up at the front, the big part of our brains, which have evolved as, you know, we humans have become top of the food chain, and, you know, we're much higher and better than all other animals now because of this thinking part of the brain. What that means is, though, that it's on high alert, it's running the whole time. So the hypnotherapy, hypnobirthing, the hypno side of things allows you to access that deep relaxation. And it's only when our thinking mind is quiet and is still that then we can allow positive suggestions about anything we want to change or however we want to feel to start to penetrate the subconscious mind. So that's the hypno and hypnobirthing. So
you're so good at explaining it, Elise, because you're so clear with how to explain it. I think that's really great, because it's absolutely comes back to habits, right? Habits of thought processes and thinking. And I also describe it as like a reprogramming what you think to be true about birth to this point, which is likely to be, as we said, medicalized, awful, terrible, and are teaching you so that you understand what it actually is. So through birth education, what birth actually is supposed to be if it's just left to happen, and then how you can then rewire your beliefs about it till this point.
Exactly. And this is where it's useful, so that even if you don't have these like real anxieties and worries about giving birth, you could be the most chilled out person, but if you've grown up in a kind of, you know, Western society, what have you seen of birth on TV, on your screens before? You've only ever seen the drama, the kind of, you know, the one-born, the
screaming,
so so even if actually you're like, I'm quite chilled about birth, that's great, but those kind of films, I remember when I went into labour with Millie, an episode of Holby City came up that I must have watched when I was about 14, and I remembered I was in the car on the way to the hospital, and it's because my mind was trying to show me what the hospital might look like. And so I hadn't done a hospital tour in my pregnancy, so I always say to people, if you can, do a hospital tour, or now of course in the COVID times you can look online, loads of birth centres and hospitals have like, you know, tours on Instagram and stuff now. And that's so important. So that just shows you how powerful the mind is, because your mind is always trying to protect you. So it's always going to try and pull up experiences that are similar, to show you kind of what this is going to look like. It's kind of like a job interview. Like if anyone wants to think about the last time they went for a job interview, probably the night before or even on the way there, you're sort of daydreaming about what the interviewer might look like, where you need to go. And again, that's your subconscious mind trying to show you the way. But the thing about the subconscious mind is it can't differentiate, and I find this a bit fascinating, it can't differentiate between an image or a memory that is stored there that is real or that's imagined
or imaginary.
So that's why like that's why I guess, you know, for me the Holby City episode, my mind had stored that as that is what a maternity unit looks like, therefore that is where you're going. And actually, of course, it was far from where I was going. But that's how the mind works. And I guess it's the oldest part of our brain, which actually stores all these memories. It also it ensures that, you know, the processes of fear are regulated in this part of our brain and can't differentiate between what is real and what's an imagined threat. So that's
the thing you just said it about threat. So similarly, we can't differentiate between a real threat to us and a perceived threat. So if we start to feel a slight bit of natural fear that in birth, our body doesn't know that it's a small amount of fear that is not real. It's just sort of nerves. Our body will react the same, whether that's a real threat. So whether there's an animal coming to attack us, or that we're just feeling a bit scared about birth, we will still release adrenaline. We will still react in that same way. So hypnobirthing is allowing you to get access such a calm part of your being, I suppose, and understand what's happening, so that the adrenaline rush or that threat doesn't ever build up to a detrimental degree in your body, I suppose.
Exactly, yeah, it's exactly that, Lucy, and it's about doing the work in your pregnancy, so realizing what your adrenaline triggers might be. You know, I'll give you one of my own examples. I was really nervous in my first pregnancy about the car journey to the hospital, because I had about half an hour, 40 minutes, kind of the quickest I could get there would probably be 25 minutes, and that would be a sort of middle of the night scenario. So I had quite a long journey. And then also, me as a person, I don't deal well with resting bitch face, and I was very nervous. I had this complete thing in my head: if I get a midwife who's like this, then it's not going to work, and it's not going to go well
for me.
Because I need someone to be like, it's okay, you can do this, it's all good. So hypnobirthing, what it enabled me to do was realize what those triggers were, so that I could actually plan for them.
That's really interesting.
And then it means that you are lowering that adrenaline on the day, and as you said, Lucy, adrenaline is such a massive part of hypnobirthing and understanding it, because with hypnobirthing, it's a full antenatal education, but a big part of it is understanding the mind-body connection, and how, psychologically what is stored up here is going to impact the way our hormones work. So we can either boost those hormones and work with our body, or we can actually work, to our detriment. So if you figure out for you what's going to kind of cause you to feel that worry and that adrenaline in your labor, and we're all going to be different there, then you can plan for these things. So like for me, for example, with the kind of car situation, I made sure that when I was in the car, I'd done some visualizations beforehand, so that as I passed really the familiar sights that I'd see on the way, I'd see those as an anchor to get even more relaxed.
Oh, that's so good.
So that was great. And still to this day, I pass a particular tube station and I go, because
I
really
that's
prepared
so cool.
And now I just remember, when I passed that tube station, I remember I felt so in control. I was in established labour here, going into hospital, and I felt like, yes.
The control thing, when you are there, if there are triggers that help you anchor back to control, that is just so powerful.
It is, isn't it? And that is what hypnobirthing is, Lucy, isn't it? Having done your training, we talk about all the C's of hypnobirthing. One of the massive ones is feeling in control. And the thing with hypnobirthing, which I think we need to get across to everyone listening today, is that you can't control your birth. You can't control how things are going to happen, but you can absolutely control how you want to respond. And so hypnobirthing will give you all the knowledge and all the technique, so that you can control how you're responding, and you can respond in a way where you are still feeling calm, you're still in control of your body, and therefore you can also then make really informed decisions. And therefore, even if your birth is deviating from what you hoped it was going to look like, you can still take that time, because you're in control of your breath. You're not in panic mode, and you are the best person to talk about the path to panic and
Panicville.
Exactly. So and I think everyone has watched those talks and knows about what happens when you spiral into panic. And I think we can all think about a time we produce adrenaline, and it's a horrible feeling. You're like, you're clammy, you're shaking. Whereas with hypnobirthing, you've got all of these tools to remain calm, to keep yourself anchored, and therefore even if things are deviating, even if you need to go on the monitor, even if the birth's into school and you've got to go to labour ward, it's okay, because you've got your breath, you've got your partner who knows how to support you, and you've got all the techniques you need to still actually feel like the labour is intense but manageable. And that's, I think,
completely. And I think with these anchors, I love anchors, because it's just it's, as you say, it's something we can use wherever we are, whatever the scenario, but they have to be practice in advance for them to really work. This is the thing we have to drive through, because some people say, could you just tell me the techniques and I'll just use them? And it's not really as simple as that. We have to understand why they're important, going back to the power of the mind and the body, truly understanding, if we feel something here, our body reacts. Just as if we're embarrassed, we blush. If we think something's funny, we laugh. If something's sad, we cry. If something's painful, our body reacts. And how we perceive pain, our body reacts. So things like that are really important. And that doesn't just come from knowing that. It's about learning the whole physiology of why things work the way they do. But then also building up that association with those anchors. Because it's no good in labour suddenly saying, oh, I'm going to look at a traffic light and be calm, because that won't work.
Exactly, of course. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, that works for me because I had
Oh
recorded
no, but it's like,
myself.
so I'm saying,
Because I'd recorded myself an MP3 script, and I'd listened to that for about 6 weeks straight every single day. Exactly. So because it absolutely comes with time. And the amazing thing is that neuroscience studies show us that our brains have this amazing component called neuroplasticity, which means that the brain can create new pathways. So you can override old ways of thinking. You can actually retrain your brain to think differently, but it does take repetition and practice. And this is why, you know, so with hypnobirthing practice, you've only got to do small bits a day, like 10 minutes max per day. It's not a lot, but you do need to sort of listen to the MP3s daily, so that your subconscious is really triggering deep relaxation when you hear those tracks. And you know, it is worth practicing things like the massage, and you know, all of the other tools, because you want those to be second nature. So you know, that's why, you know, things like positive affirmations is a mindset tool that we use a lot in hypnobirthing. They work on the process of, they're amazing, aren't they? But again, it's like they work on the process of repetition, so that very gradually you're building up those new pathways in your brain. And it does take time, but it's so impactful when it does happen.
Definitely. And it's one of those things that it's worth just why not just try it? It's something that it's so known to have such an impact. And like we talked about this practicing with my first birth, I just thought, oh, I've read the book, I know it, that's it now. And I did nothing else like you did. You created these habits and you started to work on it. I didn't. And I'm proof that I did not have a positive experience. And I truly honestly think that it was me burying my head in the sand and just thinking, oh, I've read a book now and that's enough. But it's not enough. And
that's
might be somebody,
and that's why I think you're right. That's why people say, oh, hypnobirthing didn't work for me. And then it's like, well, what did you do? I read a book. And it's like,
it's so much more, isn't it?
It's a complete reprogramming of everything that we know and that we've seen about birth, and that comes also from the reprogramming and the mindset tools, but also from all of the work we do on a hypnobirthing course of really understanding your physiology. So really understanding how the body works. And you know, when you truly understand the process of birth, the hormones of birth, then something amazing happens. Because then you go, okay, this isn't so scary. This is something my body is going to do. Just as we trust that the body is, you know, growing the baby's fingernails and hair and, you know, everything without us having to do anything, the body knows how to give birth to a baby. And I do love to look at mammals giving birth to really demonstrate that as well.
And it's funny, isn't it, that we don't seem to want to get involved there and help them out and medicalize them. We just let them do it. If you went to a zoo and watched an animal giving birth, no one would expect it to be there's, you know, let's get involved. And it just kind of just happens. They're just doing it. They're just doing it.
Exactly, and we just let it be, and we
letting it happen.
Interfere. I actually taught a vet recently, and she said if you interfere with a cat's labour, it's a nightmare, and we have to give the cat an epidural. If we leave the cat alone, then it is the most beautiful, straightforward process.
So interesting.
Really interesting. And I think maybe, Lucy, we should tell everyone watching today that why this is so important for you to understand. Why are we talking about cats? We're talking about cats because the hormones that a cat produces in labour are exactly the same as the hormones that you will produce in labour. So all female mammals produce the same hormones in labour. So it is really important to look at how other mammals give birth. Okay, we haven't gone completely crazy, hippy weirdos here.
But it's such a lesson to us, isn't it? It's such a lesson to us. But also, these mammals aren't terrified of childbirth because they're not being exposed to what we're being exposed to as humans. So our society has done us a disservice in that we are something so big and so natural in our lives. We are absolutely terrified, which is why people like you and I and others are out there trying to help us all come back to that place of less fear and normality. And then, like you say, if things do change, so the image of hypnobirthing, I think, often brings up vaginal birth, water birth, low lights, the ideal birth, you know, the ideal scenario. But we're not saying that's the way you have to want to birth, or that your birth has to be. You know, we know, we've taught people who haven't had anything like those births, but have had incredible births, whether that was abdominally, vaginally, with pain relief or not, at home, in hospital, alone during COVID, inductions. So again, I want to bust that myth today between us, that isn't what hypnobirthing practitioners are trying to preach about. Some of us haven't even had those births ourselves.
Completely.
But we're still here saying it still is so powerful. It's not about the birth that you expect a hypnobirth to look like or feel like, bless you. It's about learning how to stay anchored and calm and in control and confident when it might change paths.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And in addition to that, Lucy, I'd also add that it's also about really doing the work in your pregnancy and figuring out, where do you feel safe? So just as you said, you know, we work with women who have all sorts of births. So I've worked with several women where I go through the birthplace options for them. I take them through, you know, things like the birthplace study and all the studies on, you know, outcomes in relation to where you plan to give birth. And I can absolutely demonstrate that, you know, if you're a low risk mum, your safest place to give birth is actually on a birth centre or at home. However, I always want to say to that person, but if you are not going to feel safe in that environment, then absolutely go for delivery suite, go for labour ward.
It's not for you. Yeah.
It's not for you, because your body is only going to open up when you feel safe. So that's what the cervix is, a really shy muscle. And that shy muscle is only going to be able to actually open to let your baby come out if you're feeling really safe and relaxed. So if, you know, seeing the pool and the midwives and not having that direct access to doctors is not going to enable you to open up, then absolutely go for a labour ward birth, because that's going to be the right birth for you. So I think this is what we're about, isn't it, Lucy? It's about empowering you to make the right decision for you. But you can only make that decision if you've got the knowledge. And it's, you know, that cliche, but knowledge is so powerful when it comes to birth. It really is.
And so those who ask about partners, because someone's just popped up, and I don't normally go for questions on the screen, but it's a great thing to also mention when we're talking about how to get our partners involved with hypnobirthing, thinking about that as it doesn't, we're not saying it's a certain type of birth, we're saying that a hospital birth could be the safest place for you, and let's make that hospital birth a really great one. Or, you know, and if partners are or not even interested, but you're trying to get them on board, talk to them about how practical it is and how safe it's going to help you feel. You know, I think partners like to feel logical and practical, and, you know, that they're protecting the birth space.
Yes, definitely. And I think another way to kind of get a partner on board with hypnobirthing is to just start doing it, to do a course together, because hypnobirthing your teacher will quickly demystify what hypnobirthing is in the first session. There's something that always seems to resonate with the birth partners and a lot of kind of male birth partners that I do work with, is when I liken hypnobirthing to sports psychology.
Yes.
So when I say to them, right, just like you, okay, let's say I've got a tennis fan dad with me. Just like, you know, that Andy Murray spends, you know, a massive proportion of his time on the tennis court actually, you know, practicing playing tennis. But we also know famously that all of these top athletes, they also spend so much time with a sports psychologist actually visualizing how they want their mind to perform. Really understanding, you know, the brain, the mind, that connection. And hypnobirthing is the same for birth. It's really about fully understanding what your body's going to be doing, what your mind's going to be doing, and then loads of techniques so that you can work with the two together. So that's what it's about, really. And I think knowledge is so powerful for the partners as well. I always say, if I could only teach the pregnant mum or the birth partner, I would pick the birth partner any day. Because the birth partner has such a massive impact on the mum in labour. You know, you are that constant. So if you're high on adrenaline, running around like really uncertain, that's contagious. But equally, you feeling confident in the process, knowing when to call in, knowing how to support her at home, if you've got a partner who feels all those things, and that is equally contagious for the person in labour. And so then you've got this atmosphere of calm together, as opposed to this
Yeah.
adrenaline feeding off each other. So it is
Totally.
absolutely crucial, I think, that it's a preparation that you do together when you're preparing for birth with your birth
I
team,
agree.
whoever that is.
I agree. And like you said about the sports event, I always talk about the marathon theory. You know, it's except I said this once and somebody said, oh no, my partner did do that. I say, you wouldn't turn up to run a marathon without doing any sort of prep or any sort of training.
Yeah.
And other than that exception, normally you would think how crazy to book a marathon, to run a marathon in 9 months or 10 months and think I'm just going to turn up and see how it goes. You know, if you're really wanting that to be a memorable event, if you think that it's deserving of attempting to try and put some time into it, invest time into it, then hypnobirthing is your mind practice for that. And this is where I'm going to talk about yoga as well as being the physical practice and how they are to prep for birth or to prep for such a massive event in your life. Hypnobirthing is definitely the psychology of it, isn't it? As you were talking about sports psychology. And yoga is the physical movements and the positioning. And should we talk a bit about why they go so well together?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I can talk about my recent birth with Max, and because I think
that would be lovely.
I was always bang on about, you know, how important it is to do pregnancy yoga alongside hypnobirthing, and it's exactly as you said, Lucy. You know, in hypnobirthing, you're getting the education, you're understanding your mind, but then hypnobirthing also talks a lot about tuning in with your instincts and, you know, being in upright active positions, helping your baby to get into a good fetal position, because that has a massive impact as well on how your birth is going to unfold. And yoga is your perfect opportunity to actually practice everything you're learning in hypnobirthing, and also really getting to kind of tune in with your body. So I don't know if I've actually mentioned this to you, Lucy. So when I was in labour with Max, my labour sort of started on a Thursday evening, kind of stop-starty. I actually then fell asleep at 1 a.m. I woke up at 5 a.m. and I could no longer kind of sit in bed through the surges anymore. I'm like, right, I'm going to get up now. And instantly, where did I find myself? I found myself on my yoga mat. And I credit that down to doing your course, down to doing weekly pregnancy yoga from when I was about 28, 29 weeks pregnant. And so I didn't do it the whole way through, but, you know, in that third trimester, I did pregnancy yoga quite a lot. And I therefore had this safe space in my bedroom where I had the mat, I had my positive affirmations on the wall, I had like my LED candles, and it was 5 a.m. and I just wanted to be on my mat. And why is that? It's because throughout my pregnancy, especially second pregnancy, you're running around after a toddler, you're not enjoying it in the same way. But my yoga mat became my safe space. It became my little spot where I felt really calm and relaxed. And then, you know, I didn't put any kind of flows on or anything, but I was instinctively moving. I was using the ball. I was doing a lot of your lunges, and I was really like rocking my hips. I was getting in the flow, and it was, you know, that combined with having my affirmations track playing, having my diffuser going, and it was all of those things I had also been doing. Like whenever I would do your evening flow, your bedtime one, I would always then pop the diffuser on, put the LED candles on to create that anchor. And then again, so it just meant that naturally I did that when I was in labour. And I honestly, when I look back at my labour, the most beautiful parts of my second labour were absolutely when I was in my bedroom. It was just me and James. Millie was still asleep, and I was just riding the waves. And I actually said to James at one point, I was like, I love this bit of labour.
Really?
Because I do, because
That's so lovely.
And I think because I've released all that fear, I was like, here we go. And I was like, well done, uterus, you know? I was riding those waves, and I felt so in control. And, you know, the surges were nice and spaced apart. So it was a really relaxing time. But it was a beautiful combination of pairing the hypnobirthing, the mindset practice, the trust in my body, the trust in the process, having the support from my husband. He knew how to support me, not having to worry about that. Combined with knowing how to move and just moving instinctively with how I felt my baby and my body moving. And it was honestly so powerful. And I also work with a lot of mums going for VBAC, so vaginal births after C-sections. And I've got to tell you, Lucy, that the ones that have this successful VBACs, there's always, in 100% of mums I've worked with, have always been the ones who have done active birth yoga as well as hypnobirthing.
Oh,
and I do think that it's because you've got that confidence, you know, with the VBAC, you've got to rebuild that confidence in your and trust in your body.
Completely.
So I think that's a kind of another important thing to, you know, look at how the two go together. But then I guess the other thing with yoga and hypnobirthing is, you know, the relaxations, the yoga nidra, really stilling the mind and just being present in the moment. And again, that's another kind of proponent of hypnobirthing. So
I love talking about it because it makes me, I feel when you talked about the bit that you love about labour, I feel the same when I was in labour. It's so lovely when you've learned about it, you now know what's going on in your body, and then you feel it happening. It's so incredible that you understand what's actually happening to you, and it's lovely. But when you said about VBACs, it's so interesting because for me, I'd say to anybody who is planning a VBAC, positioning again, I mean, a lot of C-sections happen because babies just cannot descend. They get stuck. They're in an awkward laying position. Mum then gets tired. As we know, then they need. It's safe to get that baby out differently because they're exhausted, and babies are just lodged awkwardly, and that's it. So with VBAC, something that really can help build that trust is learning movements to help babies out of an awkward position.
For sure.
So that's why I would, like you, would always say to VBAC mums, please use active birth positions. But even first-time parents or anybody, when you've used yoga during your pregnancy and your hypnobirthing, and you've created, as you say, kind of a double anchor really, because you've created your anchors for what relaxes your mind, what's keeping you really centered, your music, your oils, your breathing, your visualizations that you've practiced through hypnobirthing. But then you've also combined that with conducive movements that we don't actually need teaching to us because we know how to do it. But what I'm trying to do is rewire everything we've believed to be true about positioning, which is to get into hospital and lay on a bed a lot of the time. And actually, although we all know that we should be using these movements, we don't always do it because we've lost confidence in ourselves, or it feels a bit strange to not be on the bed because that's all we've been seeing. So yoga is your way of breaking that cycle, and however birth goes, as long as it's not a C-section birth, of course, otherwise, to try and be upright as much as we can. So then you've used those positions during pregnancy so that during labour they make you feel anchored and calm that you're doing them. And like you, I found my mat and I rolled it out, and all I did is get on all fours, and I just felt like a mammal, just rocking and swaying and breathing and completely in control. And if you're not used to doing yoga, then that might feel odd to you, but once you've practiced it during pregnancy, it just becomes the most natural thing in the world to be moving your body like that.
Completely. You can't not be moving it. And then I think when you've had a birth like that, you then think, oh my goodness, I can't believe that all the births I've seen on TV and the way that our grandmothers were, you know, when births first in hospitals, they were told they had to be on the bed, and you think that's the most unnatural place. You just need to move, don't you, when you're in labour? It feels good. It's instinctive.
But if you think about labour now, does it not make you want to move your body a bit?
I'm 100% swaying. 100%. And you know, when I even downstairs, I've got this kind of like little nook in my living room, and every time I pass it now, all I can see is myself in labour going like woo and because you've got to move those hips, because it's, you know, labour isn't just your cervix opening, it's also your baby moving down through the stations in your pelvis. So you've got to work with that. And you know, we know from the stats that when women have an active birth, there are so many brilliant benefits. Like your baby is 54% less likely to become distressed. Why is that? Because you're upright, you're active, gravity's on your side, and probably because you are breathing and you're getting a fantastic supply of blood and oxygen to your baby. But you're also 29% less likely to have a C-section. You're, I think, 21% less likely to request an epidural. So by being active, you are going to be boosting your own endorphins. Now, your endorphins are a massive, really important neurotransmitter when it comes to birth. Endorphins, if you take the word endorphin and literally break it down, it means endogenous morphine. So it is your own natural morphine.
Actual morphine,
So you know, in labour, you are naturally going to be producing your own natural morphine, your own natural painkiller, because what is labour at its most fundamental form? Labour is exercise.
Yeah, it's a
simply,
physical
it's your
event.
uterus muscle, like exercising, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're going to be producing those endorphins, and this is why I think, you know, women can get really scared. Like, there's no way I could have a birth without drugs and so on. But I would want to just say to you, your body is going to be producing those natural painkillers for you. And actually, the studies show that endorphins are between 20 to 200 times more powerful than morphine. So you've got this incredible chemical like coursing through your veins to help you cope with the massive change to the muscle in your uterus. So your body's system is there. And, you know, if we think back to it, like, why do we have this amazing cocktail of hormones going on? It's so that we wanted to procreate and do it again for the continuation of the human species. And that's why, you know, mammals, going back to the mammals, they can give birth so easily because they're not questioning it and doubting it. They're having an intense physical process. But just like when you go for a poo, your body is telling you it needs to do something, and then you take yourself off to a quiet, safe space and you do it. And, you know, that's why animals remove themselves from a herd or find a safe space. So that's why it's really useful to think, you know, when you're preparing for your birth, okay, maybe you want to choose a hospital or a birth center to birth in, but bear in mind then that you're taking yourself out of a safe space into probably quite an unfamiliar environment. So that's fine, that's good, but how can you make that safe for yourself? So what can you take with you so that actually you're not super distracted by everything that's going on around you? So do you want to take an eye mask with you? Do you want to just make sure you've got your headphones and got your birthing playlist or your MP3s plugged in? Do you want to take you know, have you been using a particular scent in your pregnancy? Can you take that with as an anchor? So again, this is where you kind of use the anchors, and then this is where then the combination of using all your anchors, using your mindset tools, plus the yoga, which is giving you that confidence in your body and how your body wants and needs to move. And then you end up with a birth where you are bossing it. And, you know, your midwives are going, you're doing amazingly. And I think first time I remember so clearly thinking, like, please tell me what to do, to the midwife. And having done all my research, that had lessened, and I was very confident for the first stage of labour, for the dilation. But still, when it came to second stage, I put in my birth preferences, which is like a birth plan. Please coach my pushing, please help me out. And that was my only mistake in my birth preferences, because I didn't trust my body. And it meant that I'd asked for them to then start coaching me. And what did that do? It triggered loads of adrenaline, and I ended up having a very long second stage, because actually I just felt completely watched. And so, you know, I think it's about really understanding all of those different proponents, but you get that through really good birth preparation.
Definitely,
don't you? So,
and I think it does, you know, for first time mums especially, it takes a lot of trust. I understand how strange it might seem to be able to find a place in your mind where you have learned to trust labour. That must seem impossible if you've never experienced it before, and I completely get it. But we know that when you do learn, and it does take learning, because we know we need to rewire what we've been told to be true, incredible things happen. But it's a big step, a big leap of faith, perhaps, to try and shut out all the noise about birth and just focus on yourself and what you can do, which is studying hypnobirthing courses, yoga. All of these things are available, and they are available because we know they work. But it does take a massive leap of faith to trust yourself. That's difficult.
It does, and it also it takes a bit of confidence to say, you know, if you're at Sainsbury's and the checkout lady sees you're pregnant and she wants to start telling her horror story, it actually does take some confidence to go, do you know what, I'm going to come back and see you once I've had my baby. And, you know, please don't tell me that story, because even though as humans we want to know the drama, we want to know those stories, but that stays in that subconscious part of the brain. And remember, that subconscious part of the brain is what is responsible for the stat is between 88 to 96% of everything we do every single day, all the memories, all the feelings, all the habits. So it's gonna stay there. So if you can, try not to actually take on those negative stories until you've had your baby, and also and instead, you know, looking for positive birth stories, accounts like yours, Lucy, where you're sharing incredible information and images and so on. You know, that's and I guess this is an important point as well. So with that in mind, control your social media feed when you're pregnant, because when you're pregnant, you're at a heightened vulnerability state. So, you know, naturally you're more alert because you're wanting to keep yourself and this baby safe. So be very conscious of what you are consuming, and if things aren't kind of filling you up with feeling confident about birth, then, you know, perhaps mute or unfollow for a little bit.
Unfollow for a bit.
And find the kind of accounts and find your tribes where people are talking in your language and helping you to feel supported, because going into your birth, you need to feel knowledgeable, you need to feel like you understand the process, you need to feel like you actually have these techniques which you've practiced, which can keep you feeling calm, but you also need to feel supported. And I think that is where the big difference comes between reading a hypnobirthing book or even doing an online course and actually doing an in-person course where you've got someone who fully trusts childbirth and has had a lot of experience with it, and then you can draw on that person for some support, because unfortunately we don't have continuity of care. Most women watching this now won't have a named midwife who they're going to then have at their birth. So find that person in your birth preparation and it will make the most massive difference.
And with what we put into our subconscious as well, and what you just said is perfect, Elise, as well, but what we put into our subconscious, going back to the stories and at the checkout, if somebody starts telling you, oh, don't have a home birth or whatever it might be that people love to do when someone's pregnant, those thoughts, you might not think that they're bothering you, but when you're in labor, as we said, you're so heightened, your senses are, it's designed to do that, to protect us. We're designed to be on high alert so that we are protecting our unborn babies and ourselves from any danger. Those thoughts and fears that you suppressed are likely to, if they're going to rear their heads, it's going to be during labor, right?
Then because your brain is trying to protect you.
It's
your
there
brain
going, but what if this
forward?
Exactly. She said that might happen. She said that might happen.
It's so true. So if you've planned a home birth and then, you know, you have these thoughts in the back
someone's
of
told
your
you something,
head, then actually it's going to come up. So that's again why working with someone, doing your preparation, reading the reports that show, for example, there was a massive study, I'm sure you've mentioned this before, Lucy, of 500,000 planned home birth, which was published in the Lancet in 2019. And that study showed that giving birth at home is as safe as giving birth in a birth centre for a first-time mum and a second-time mum. And it used to be home birth was only as safe for a second-time mum. Now actually it's as safe for first-time mum as well. But if you don't know that, if you haven't read that study for yourself, and you're always going to have that, but what if? And so that is why, you know, taking the time to really think things through, to really question things, to really understand all your choices and your options, plus the knowledge and the confidence in how your body's going to work, honestly makes the most massive, massive difference.
And it's not about saying that, or if people tell us about risks, we're ignoring that there might be risks involved. This is not what it's about, because a good, like we said about finding a course, a good course is going to give you all of the stuff, all of the info. It's not about going, we're going to ignore all risks and we're only going to focus on the good stuff. We're actually saying, no, let's look at all the risks. Let's look at all of the things that are available to us, all the risks of this and the benefits to this, and make informed choices about our birth. We're also going to talk about the things that might happen, but what we're going to do is demystify how common they seem to be because of the society that we're living in and the TV shows that show them. We're actually probably going to bust some myths, but also tell you that of course there are going to be risks to X, Y and Z, but if we use X, Y and Z, we'll also increase the likelihood of this happening. It's about stacking the odds in your favor to A, having a great experience, but B, having a low intervention experience, and C, knowing that when those risks present themselves, I think I'm losing Elise. Are you still there?
I was
Sorry.
You too there. Okay, I hope it gets back.
Okay. But if and when risks present themselves, you are in a great, calm and in control headspace to make the right and safest choice for you and your baby.
Exactly. And that is what it's about. Hypnobirthing is not about one type of birth. It's really not about having a drug-free water birth. It's about having a birth where you feel in control, where you feel prepared, you feel knowledgeable, and you are making informed decisions on the day that feel right for you and your baby. And that is so powerful. And I can't tell you how many women I've worked with where the birth has been a birth in theatre with forceps, for example, and that woman has come out going, I had the most incredibly positive experience. On paper, you'd go, oh my God, really? Forceps? Theatre? But actually, it was so positive. She understood every step of the way why things were happening. You know, she took the time to say, thanks for all that information. Let me just go and digest that with my birth partner. Can we just understand everything? And then we're going to let you know what we want to do. They understood their options. You know, they really kind of when you are so informed but by what's going on, you can have a completely different experience. And that is what the hypnobirthing is about. It's
Yes.
not about one type of birth. It's about having a positive birth so that how you feel about your birth is positive. And this is so important, because the way you feel about your birth is what stays with you forever. You can't change that. And that's why the woman in Sainsbury's still wants to talk about her birth, and she might be in her 60s, because it's so impactful.
It stays with you.
Life-changing. Exactly. It's so life-changing. So if you've got these tools, so that, you know, and I think this is the other thing, is that through this knowledge you understand that there are variables in birth, that actually your baby could turn in labour and then baby isn't pressing his head nice and firmly on the cervix. And so actually, thank God for the medical interventions, we've got them there, but it's about you using them and understanding why and how they're being used. And it's about being an active participant in your birth, and not just going, oh well, I did that because the doctor said that, or I wasn't allowed this, or, you know, I heard one woman who came to me for her second labour where she was told that she had to have a sweep because it was the law. I mean, you know, there's exactly, and like there's no law. It's your body and your baby, and nothing can be done to you without you giving informed consent. But it's up to you to make sure your consent is informed. So it's just that balance there of getting that right. And you know, it takes time. Like, I'm very much a, you know, good girl, hop up on the bed, and I would hop up on the bed, and you know, I did that a lot in my first pregnancy. And it's very hard, especially when it is your first pregnancy. You want to kind of really comply, and I'm not saying don't comply at all. I'm just saying understand why things are being done, so that you can, and then you can also control it. So for example, if you're at the end of pregnancy and you're considering whether or not to have a sweep, for example, and you decide that having a sweep today is the right choice for you, then before you do that sweep, you know, use your hypnobirthing and your yoga. You say, can you just give me a couple of minutes while I can just center myself, breathe, relax down below, and then I'll give you the thumbs up when I'm ready. So you are staying in control. It's the smallest things, and it's the thing with hypnobirthing, isn't it? It's all of these little things that can come together and massively change the way you feel about your experience.
And I think this completely, Elise, and I think complying is something that we struggle to see, that if we have our own opinions or thoughts about our treatment during birth, that we're being difficult or we're being hard work. That's not what we're saying. We're not suggesting that we need to have any intention in the birth room. That's not what we want at all. What we're saying is, if you understand why something is going to be suggested to you, or why something's going to be recommended, you also have every ability or every right to say yes thank you or no thank you. But just knowing that that decision was yours is huge. For example, if your baby is laying transverse and, you know, are not going to be born vaginally, they cannot descend vaginally, and the safest absolute option is to have a C-section birth, feeling in that decision making, the feeling that you were told you had to have a C-section birth, is taking your power out of your hands. Even though, of course, it is the safest option, just saying to that person, what do you like to do? What do you think is the safest option? You saying, yeah, the safest option is for me to choose a C-section birth. It's a shift in control, and it makes all the difference.
Completely agree, Lucy. And it's similar, like for, you know, say you are having an induction of labour, and let's say that actually you've decided that induction is right, there are really good medical grounds, that's why you want to go with it. And let's say, you know, you've had your gel or your pessary, you've had the cervical ripening, and still after all of that your cervix is still closed, it's not dilating. You can then choose, instead of going forward with the rest of the induction, which is statistically you're more likely to end in a C-section if that's what's happening, the cervix isn't responding, you can at that point put a stop to the induction and request an elective C-section, and then have an abdominal birth where you are not also in labour, where it's not, you know, last minute an emergency, where actually you've said, this induction isn't working, my body's not ready, what are our options? And it's about knowing that you've got options. And I think this is the thing, if you don't know you have choices and options, then you're not going to have any.
They're limited.
You always do. You always do, exactly.
Elise, I can't believe this, but our chats are going to chuck us out in about 40 seconds because Instagram has changed it again, and they're now only doing 1 hour videos. So we're going to have to sign off. But before I go, can I just thank you so much for your time today?
Of course, Liz, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone hasn't yet got their questions answered, these are all saved, don't worry, because we've recorded the screen so I can answer them. But also head over and like and follow Elise's page. And I will say this to IGTV, we're about to be cut off. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lucy, and thanks for watching, everybody. Have a lovely day.
Thank you for coming, and we'll have to do a round 2 another time.
Oh, I'd love to, anytime.